I fool an old lady. Out back at the neighbor lady's place, her name was Miss McGillicuddy, and she was the cussediest old lady you ever did see. She was always shouting at us kids not to trample on her petunias or walk on her grass, but most of all to keep my dog Smelly away from her rabbits. Smelly was a big old black Labrador. He even got his name because when he was a puppy, after he'd ate, he'd let out these humongously smelly farts that drove everybody from the room, which is why we took to feeding him outside. And, well, Smelly liked to get into old Miss McGillicuddy's rabbits, which is what I was trying to get around to, which is that Miss McGillicuddy used to keep a regular rabbit hotel out back of her place, with the rabbit hutches stacked 2 and 3 high, forming a kind of half circle with a tree stump in the middle. Miss McGillicuddy, she'd be petting and feeding and cleaning those rabbits near every day. It was like they was her babies. I don't know if she had her any real kids. Them rabbits seemed to do just as good the way she fussed over 'em so. And the funny thing was, every Sunday Miss McGillicuddy used to go out to her rabbits and sit on the tree stump with her Bible and read to 'em like they was her flock and she was the preacher, which everybody knows was a foolish thing on account there wasn't no such thing as lady preachers. Her rabbits would be munching on their bunny kibble or lettuce or their carrots and whatnot like they was a blessed communion wafers. And old Miss McGillicuddy would be sitting there on the tree stump in her Sunday floral dress and Sunday bonnet in the spring and summer, and wrapped in her overcoat during the cold months, and go through her sermon, reading from a passage of the Old Testament, then something from the Godspells, and then something from the Letters or Acts, all the time working herself into a fervor to save them bunny souls. So you can imagine the fit it put her in when Smelly would get out of his yard and into her rabbit hutches. He'd be running back and forth, barking and carrying on, his tail wagging and him leaping up against the rabbit hutches like he was trying to knock 'em over and bust into 'em, and Miss McGillicuddy would be screaming, "I'm going to send that dog to the pound. I'm going to call up the pound, and they're going to come and take that animal away, and they're going to euthanize him. That's what I'm going to do if you don't keep him in your yard." I didn't know exactly what euthanize meant at the time, but it didn't sound good. And my mama later told me it meant to put him to sleep, which at first I couldn't figure out why Smelly needed any help going to sleep. He seemed to do that well enough on his own. But then Loopy told me it really meant she was going to have him killed. So every time Miss McGillicuddy threatened to have my Smelly put to sleep, he'd be barking, Miss McGillicuddy'd be screaming she was going to call the pound, and I'd be trying to tug him away from there, crying and begging with her to give my Smelly one more chance. He didn't mean no harm. He was just a dog, doing what come natural, which didn't seem to cut no ice with her at all. One day I came home from school, and there was Smelly lying in the middle of the lawn with a big grin on his face, and one of Miss McGillicuddy's rabbits between his paws. The rabbit was all dirty like Smelly had chased it through the mud and thrashed it about. Here I was in a fix. Miss McGillicuddy would sure have Smelly euthanized now if she found out about Smelly killing one of her precious fool rabbits. As a Christian, I'm supposed to love all living creatures, but I guess you can tell I had a bad attitude towards Miss McGillicuddy's rabbits because they was going to be the death of my poor old black Labrador. As soon as Smelly saw me, I knew he'd done something bad. And just in case he was in doubt, I told him so. "Bad dog," I said. "That old lady's going to have you put to sleep now, and that means having you killed, too." He put his head low so his big jaw was covering that bunny, like he thought maybe if he just lay there, I wouldn't notice the white bunny fur peeking out from under his massive head and paws, and all the while I was yelling at him and scolding him, I was in a terrible fright. He just sort of lay there and rumbled, this low growling like, coming up from his big black chest. But I weren't scared of him. I knowed him when he was a puppy. I'd found him wandering down the middle of the street, just a swollen-bellied, lice-ridden, mangy, as close to death's trap door as you can get without falling in a little, mutt as you'd ever seen. And I took him in, and even when the vet said the poor little creature's near gone, might as well put him down, which is another way of saying to kill him. It's funny how many words we have for to kill something because we don't want to say the real word. And I wasn't going to lose him now, not to one of Mrs. McGillicuddy's fool rabbits. So I swatted that stupid dog on the head and beat him on his butt and scolded him and told him how disappointed I was in him, and what was going to happen to him till he finally saw some sense and let me have that rabbit. It was then I knew what I had to do. I took that rabbit inside and I washed it up good. I shampooed it twice, just like it says on the bottle. Repeat as necessary. Even though they wasn't thinking about no dead rabbits when they wrote those instructions. When I thought it was clean as a rabbit ought to be, I took out my mama's blow dryer, and I blowed it dry and fluffed up its fur till it was all nice-like and clean and white as a Easter bunny. I even put a daub of my mama's mascara around its eyes where it seemed to lost some color from its tangling with that fool dog. Then came the trickiest part. I stole back over to Miss McGillicuddy's yard, thanking the Lord she wasn't home just then. There was the cage door hanging open. That's where I figured probably Miss McGillicuddy had missed latching it all the way and where Smelly had gotten inside at the rabbit. So I slipped the critter back into the cage and eased the door shut and latched it tight, hoping all the time Miss McGillicuddy'd find it and think it died natural in his sleep. The day seemed to go on forever till Miss McGillicuddy came back. I was out in the front yard pretending to play in the dirt when she finally come back. She'd been to see the preacher, no doubt, petitioning for her beloved bunny's souls to be admitted into heaven or something. I could tell, the part about being to the preacher, not the bunny's, because she had on her best dress and her shiny black shoes and her fancy wax straw hat like she'd been trying to impress him with how godly she was. Though what that get-up had to do with being godly, I never could figure out no ways. She came traipsing up the walkway, and I say, "'Lo, Miss McGillicuddy," in a low, soft voice, not loud enough that it would call attention to itself, but loud enough so she'd know I wasn't lacking proper respect, and crouched there not breathing for the longest time waiting. I was picturing in my mind the steps she was taking in her house, setting her bag down on the kitchen table where she kept it, walking into the bathroom and taking a pee, standing up and washing her hands, and then going outside to say hello to her damn rabbits. Excuse my language, but I just said that to express how I was feeling at the time. I wasn't too fond of them stupid beasts at the moment. That's when I heard the scream. She screamed long and loud like a fire truck siren so that it pierced inside your skull like a 4-penny nail. Presently, my daddy and mama came running out of our house and around to hers to see what was happening. You can imagine, I was all in a sweat fearing that my little trick was going to be found out and that I'd have to tell the truth. Something which, in my wicked heart, I didn't want to do. And tell them what I'd done, and more important, what my black Labrador Smelly had gone and done. When I got there to her little bunny hotel, Miss McGillicuddy was standing in front of the dead rabbit's cage, pointing her finger like a ghost and panting like she'd just run a marathon. And in between her panting and gulping down great gulps of air, explaining in this high-pitched voice, "I buried Jeremiah 3 days ago." She'd given all her bunnies biblical names like. "And now he's come back from the dead, risen like Lazarus from the dead. Only the fright must have too much for his little heart, and he died again. Died and gone to heaven. Hallelujah! My prayers have been answered. Hallelujah!" My mom and daddy don't know what to make of all this. And on the way back to our house, when we're safely away from the Lazarus bunny raised from the dead, my daddy stopped me on the lawn and bent down into my face and asked me, and that wasn't loud, but it had an edge of steel in it, "Angel Louise, do you know what happened? Anything about this?" "No, sir," I lied, trying hard as all get out to look as innocent as possible. "Angel Louise?" my mama asked, bending down low to me too, like as if I know anything I better say it. But I was deathly afraid for Smelly, and I figured it was best to pretend to be purty ignorant. "No, ma'am," I said, but I couldn't look at her directly because she had this crazy eye that liked to look straight through me. And I took to studying my shoes like suddenly they was the most interesting things I ever done seen in the whole wide world. I was never allowed to forget the wicked thing I done in deceiving that old woman, 'cause after that, Miss McGillicuddy never let up on her miracle bunny, never missing a chance to put people in mind of the rabbit that rose from the dead. And when she finally died, we went to her funeral. I saw that at her instructions they put on her tombstone one last reminder of the wicked trick I'd played on her. Gone to heaven, but preceded by her beloved Jeremiah.